In a quiet Iowa town where life followed a familiar, almost boring pattern, 27-year-old Elena lived. Her daily routine consisted of working at a coffee shop, paying endless bills, and taking care of her most precious possession, her young daughter, Sophia. After divorcing her husband, who left them immediately after her daughter's diagnosis, Elena learned not to expect help from others. She held on for the sake of Sophia, who, despite her poor health, always smiled as if she did not notice the difficult circumstances. But recently, the disease began to progress. First, she felt tired, dizzy, and then fainted. Elena took Sophia to doctors, underwent endless tests, until she finally received a final diagnosis. One of the best heart surgeons in the state said it simply and coldly: her heart is exhausted. Without surgery, she will not last until the end of the year. There is a clinic in Boston that takes on such cases, but the cost is over $110,000. These words went through my chest like a knife. Elena had no relatives in politics or rich acquaintances. She earned a little more than the minimum wage, lived modestly, and it was ridiculous to even dream of such money. The only hope she had was her parents. They lived in the suburbs, had a big house, and always boasted of stability. Elena hadn't asked them for anything for a long time. Her pride didn't allow her to. But this time Sophia's life was at stake. She called and came to their house the next day. Her mother opened the door, surprised, but invited her in. Her father was sitting in the living room watching TV. When he found out why she had come, he turned off the sound and listened in silence. Elena did not hold back. She told him everything about the diagnosis, doctors, the chance of surgery, the cost. She did not ask with emotion, she just told the truth. She waited for a reaction, hoping that at least a word of support would be heard. But her father was the first to speak. Dryly, evenly: "We have already helped you. Do you remember your wedding? We helped you with a car, an apartment. $110,000 is too much. It's not affordable. Dad, this is Sophia, your granddaughter. It's not some kind of luxury. It's her life." The mother just looked down. "We have other expenses now," she said quietly. "Henry's wedding is coming up. We've paid for everything. We cannot refuse. This is our family too." Elena was silent. Her heart was beating loudly. Tears stood in her eyes, but she held back. She got up and took the baby in her arms. Sophia was already dozing, not understanding anything. "I understand you." She left the house and started walking. It was cold and snow was starting to fall. Every step was painful in her soul, not only from despair but from betrayal. Her closest people turned away at the worst possible moment, but it was then that a thought came to her mind. She would not give up. She would not let this story end tragically. Even if the whole world is against her, she will go on to the end. For Sophia to love. Spring came early in Iowa. The sun warmed the ground, the snow disappeared in a few days, and the trees stretched upward, blooming with new life. But for Elena and Sophia, the world was not getting warmer. Every day, the mother looked at her daughter, whose eyes were fading. Her girl did not run around like other children. She lay down more often, not complaining, but silently fighting the exhaustion she shouldn't have known at the age of 4. Elena took action. She created pages on social networks, posted photos of Sophia, described the diagnosis, and attached all the medical documents. She did not embellish the reality and did not try to evoke pity. She just told the truth. The story went viral. People reposted the posts, commented, and sent at least a few dollars. Some gave 10, others 100. But even on their best days, they never raised more than $500, 700. Time was running out. Only a month. The Boston clinic set a deadline. If there was no prepayment by the beginning of summer, the place would be given to another patient. Elena hardly slept. She worked, wrote, called, and searched. Her story was even published in a local newspaper. And a blogger from another state made a video. The flow of funds increased slightly, but the goal was still tens of thousands away. Meanwhile, the parents' life went on as usual. They decorated the house with lanterns and brought new furniture for the garden. Henry's wedding was to be the loudest event in the neighborhood. They invited more than 100 guests, ordered live music, florists from Chicago, an $8,000 cake and an orchestra. The restaurant was the most expensive in the state. where even the entrance reservation cost hundreds of dollars. Olena found out about it by accident. Her neighbor sent her an Instagram video. It showed her father dancing merrily with a glass of champagne, her mother in a champagne-colored dress, and her brother and bride among the flowers and fireworks. She was not crying, not anymore. It was only a dull feeling, as if she had been cut out of the family. Sophia was sleeping next to her at the time, with a thin tube of oxygen in her nose. The next day, there was a knock at the door. It was Mr. Ahar, the neighbor from across the street, an elderly man, always a bit aloof, with a dry humor and an old dog that always ran around. He had never been a close friend, but he sincerely greeted her and helped her carry her heavy bags. Olena opened the door in surprise. "Can I come in for a minute?" Lure asked quietly. He sat down in the kitchen, a little nervous, twirling an old cap in his hands. "I saw the post. I read it. Helen and I decided to sell the house." Olena didn't understand at first. "What house?" "Ours. To give you money for Sophia's treatment." She was confused. Her head was buzzing, her heart was racing, and her hands were shaking. She tried to find the words, but couldn't. "We've already found a buyer. We will move to an apartment near the park. It's small, but it will be enough for us, and the child will have a chance at life." "What? This is all you know?" "Not all. Everything is life," Igor answered. "And the house, it can be built again." The news of Igor and Galina's decision quickly spread through the streets. At first, it seemed like a joke or an exaggeration. But confirmation came quickly. The house was really put up for sale, and potential buyers were already coming to view it. This act stirred the hearts of the neighbors. People began to think about what they were doing and what they could do. The families who had lived near Olena for many years suddenly announced that they were also joining the collection. Someone sold an old car. Someone withdrew all their savings. Someone gave up a vacation trip that they had been planning for years. Each of them invested not just money in saving the girl, their soul, empathy, humanity. For Olena, this was a shock that turned her entire inner sense of the world upside down. She was used to being disappointed in people, used to being ignored and indifferent. But now she saw completely different images, kind, warm, capable of self-sacrifice for someone else's child. Her faith, killed by the betrayal of her closest relatives, began to be restored, not in words, but in deeds. When there was a little less than 20,000 left to the collected amount, one of the local entrepreneurs, who learned about the situation through the news, completed the collection without any unnecessary questions. He did not want publicity, did not meet with Olena in person. He simply sent a check with a short signature. "Take care of life." Everything happened extremely quickly. Documents were drawn up, approval was obtained from the clinic, tickets were purchased. They were already waiting in Boston. The doctors were ready to operate on Sophia immediately after the examination. The flight seemed tense. The girl almost did not react to the outside world. But when they landed and she was taken to the clinic, something changed. She smiled faintly, as if she felt that the struggle was not over yet. The operation lasted over 11 hours. During this time, Olena did not sit down once. She sat in the corridor, pressing Sophie's favorite toy to her chest, and prayed, not to anyone in particular but simply to the universe, to silence, to that invisible thing that sometimes responds. When the surgeon finally came out and announced that everything had been successful, Olena did not feel joy, only silence, the same one in which relief comes after a long, excruciating cry. It was necessary to wait a few more days to understand how the body would react, whether there would be any complications. But the doctors were already calling it a miracle, and an even greater miracle, timely intervention. A few more weeks of delay, and even the best clinic would not have been able to help. In the first days after the operation, Sophia almost did not speak. Her body was weak, but her eyes were calm. They no longer sought salvation. They only watched, silently thanking. The doctors assured her that in time she would recover completely. The worst was behind her. Returning home a month and a half later, Elena was no longer the woman who had once stood with her head down in front of her parents. Her back straightened, fire appeared in her eyes. Sophie was alive, and that was the main thing. She began to laugh again, draw, ask about the world. Her heart beat steadily, for the first time in her life. And Igor's house stood empty. The new owners had not yet moved in, but an old copper plate with his name still hung on the mailbox. Every day Elena, passing by, would stop for a moment and look at it. A part of her new heart remained there, not physical, but human. A miracle had settled there. A year passed. Sophia returned to normal life, and Elena changed with her. Her story first became known in the local news. Then she was invited to appear on television. The woman who was betrayed by her own family but saved by ordinary neighbors was talked about not only in their city but also beyond its borders. Elena did not seek fame, but she came to it herself, as a result of sincerity, perseverance, and motherly love. Elena directed the money that was not spent on treatment to create a small charitable fund. Its goal was to help families like theirs, those who are in trouble but have no support. Within a few months, the fund collected the first donations, and Elena personally helped with cases, met with parents of sick children, wrote texts of appeals, and helped prepare documents for clinics. Meanwhile, Sophia grew up to be an inquisitive and attentive girl. She began to understand early on what had happened to her, and that her life was a gift that could not have been. There was a maturity in her eyes that adults often lacked. She easily got along with people, but she always felt who was in front of her, sincere or not. Olena returned to university, continued her studies in an online format. She wanted to get a qualification in social work. It was important for her to have not only her own experience, but also knowledge that would help her systematically support others. Igor and Galina, having moved into an apartment, lived quietly, without pretensions. They did not seek fame or gratitude, but Olena never left them without attention. Every month she came with packages of products, flowers, and Sophia considered them her second grandparents. Warm hugs, tea parties, evenings with books became part of their new family circle. Olena's relatives disappeared from her life. After Andrew's wedding, his mother and father tried to restore their reputation, but the local community no longer accepted them as before. The wedding turned out to be a short-lived happiness. The brothers' marriage fell apart after 6 months. The daughter-in-law filed for divorce, and with her the business in which they had invested a significant part of the same $400,000 disappeared. Life put everything in its place. What money cannot buy, love, kindness, trust, became the most valuable, and this is what Olena shared with others every day. Not as a victim, but as a woman who went through contempt and loss, but was able to preserve the most important thing, faith in her heart. More than 10 years have passed. Sophia has grown into a smart, independent woman, graduated from a prestigious American university, and founded her own company. Her name was mentioned in business magazines. She was invited to conferences. She earned millions, but she retained her modesty and the heart that she had been taught to be sensitive since childhood. Olena also lived peacefully. Her foundation continued to work, having already helped dozens of children, and although financial difficulties were a thing of the past, the emotional scar from the betrayal of her family did not disappear. One evening, Olena received an unexpected call. Her father, Victor, became seriously ill. The diagnosis was pancreatic cancer, late stage. Treatment in a private clinic could have given him a chance, but it cost about $80,000. Victor turned to Andrei, his son, for whom he had once arranged a luxurious wedding, but he waved it off without even listening to the end. The business had failed, there was no money and now sympathy too. Sophia was left with the last chance. The grandfather who had once refused her help appeared outside her office. He waited an hour, two, while the security guard delivered the message. Finally Sophia came out, surprised but restrained. They were silent for a long time, both of them, as if they wanted to say something important but didn't know how. She remembered, not the scenes but the feelings, the cold, the disappointment, how her mother cried at night. She knew she shouldn't hold a grudge, but the pain from childhood was deeply rooted. Sophia promised to think about it. A few days later, $5,000 was credited to the clinic's account. For her it was crumbs, the amount she had spent in half an evening at a restaurant, but for Victor, it was a shock. He understood it was a symbol. Not help, but a sign. An answer that mirrored the one he had given himself years earlier. He left a note on his way out of the clinic. There were no pleas in it, just one sentence: "I'm sorry I didn't save you then. Now I know how much it hurts." Sophia read it that evening. She didn't cry. She just stared out the window for a long time, holding the sheet in her hand. She didn't feel anger, Only silence. For the first time in years, complete silence in her heart.